I've been a journalist all my life. I started as a reporter in one of the small cities in southwestern Poland. It was a mining city. After the collapse of the communism, all the mines were closed, and basically there was unemployment of 60%, and all kind of bad things happened afterward. And this is the time when I started to be a reporter for Gazeta Wyborcza, that was the first independent daily newspaper in Poland. I was an editor responsible for our newsroom, so I was a head of news responsible for 450 journalists. I was responsible for launching new products. I launched 2 daily newspapers, more than 20 magazines in print in the past, and also several news portals and many other products for mobile. And in the end, I was the vice president of the Agora Foundation, that is like a company running different businesses, not only news, but also cinemas, movie production, radio stations, and the others. And 3 years ago, I moved to the United States. Now I work at Harvard Business School. What I'm doing basically is I'm studying the disruption patterns of how new technologies change the behavior of consumers and how they affect industries. Not only media, but also transportation, food, retail, but media, because I've been a journalist all my life, media is the most important one. And today I would like to start with a question: who is really, today, the biggest newspaper in the world? How do you think? Would it be in China, maybe, like the People's Daily, 2.5 million of circulation? Or maybe something in India. I have a friend who is publishing Dainik Jagran, and they claim they have 4 million copies sold every day. Or maybe we should forget about, all the print media, and we should rather think that there is a newspaper that people all over the world use every day for news. They come there, they look for news, and basically it's available in the digital media. And maybe this newspaper alone, if you would compare it to other countries, it's bigger than China, it's bigger than India, it's bigger than anything else. Because today it has almost 2 billion users. And by the way, if we add all other social media networks that are global, we will find Messenger, over 1 billion users, WhatsApp, over 1 billion users, YouTube, 2 Chinese networks, QQ and WeChat, Instagram, Tumblr, even Kontakte is somewhere on the position number 21. And by the way, 4 of them belong to one company called Facebook. Facebook, of course, launched their own Facebook network. They launched Messenger, but they bought WhatsApp, they bought Instagram. And by the way, it's not the end, because just last year they launched another network in the States that is targeting young people. To become a member, you need to be younger than 18. So maybe when we think about who is the most powerful editor in the world, this is the guy. Because billions of people really learn news through his networks. Of course, he says, no, I'm not an editor. I'm not a media company at all. Facebook is not a media company. We are a technology company. We don't produce content. We just produce tools that people will, publish their content and will just distribute it. Is it really the case? So first, I work at the business school, so we look at business models. So what's the business model of Facebook? Facebook basically aggregates audiences and then keeps their attention and sells this attention to advertisers. So basically, what Facebook is doing, this is the business model of most of media outlets around the world. To, get the audience and sell the ads to this audience. And then, how people are you really using Facebook? So in the States, the data from 2016 is that, almost half of adults learn their news from Facebook. And in some countries, like Brazil, like Greece, for some cultural reasons, over 70% of people learn their news from social media, and mostly Facebook. So maybe Facebook is a media company because people believe it is. People use it like a medium But then, last year, my colleague from Norwegian newspaper Aftenposten published this picture. This is a very old picture from the Vietnam War. It shows the kids escaping the village that was put on fire by American forces during the war. And basically, this is a very famous piece of war journalism. And they published it on Facebook, and Facebook algorithms found that there is a naked person on a picture. So there was a moderator that decided, oh, it's a naked kid on the picture. We don't allow naked kids on the pictures. So they deleted the post. And then even a prime minister of Norway decided to protest against the censorship on Facebook, so she published the picture. And Facebook moderator somewhere in Germany also decided, oh, it's a naked girl on the picture. We don't allow naked girls on the picture. So he also censored the picture. After the big protest and after media all over the world wrote that, it's just insane that there is a big censor that will be deciding which news is available to people and which is not, Facebook said, okay, yes, we acknowledge that. There are pictures that are against our rules, but they are newsworthy. So from now on, we will decide what is newsworthy. And if it is a newsworthy piece, we will allow it. I've been an editor for many years. I would say that judging what is newsworthy is exactly what editors do. This is what we do. We get a lot of information and we decide, oh, it's a newsworthy, we should publish it. I believe Facebook basically makes editorial decisions. There is a difference, though. They don't make it like we did in our newsroom. This is an office of Facebook in Menlo Park, California. This is, like one of the main streets, because it's like a small city, yeah? Like more than 20,000 people work there. So basically, you can ride there, there are restaurants, there are like pubs, and, it's like a city you can spend the whole day or your whole life there. And they don't have a newsroom. There is not such a thing as an editorial office of Facebook where there are editors deciding, oh, it's a newsworthy. No. This will be a small team of engineers that design the algorithm that will be deciding what is news and what is not. And this algorithm is basically a computer program that will be making automatic decisions for these 2 billion people, and it will decide what is news for them and what is not. And that's why, what we learned from Facebook, these are data from Facebook I got. So just 2 weeks ago, one of their directors told me that whenever you come to Facebook, you open the website or you open the app, there is like 3,000 stories waiting for you. And obviously nobody has time to read all these 3,000 stories. So the goal of the algorithm is to choose the most relevant stories, like 200, and basically show them first. The thing is that according to their own internal data that they publish in one of the academic journals, basically people click on the first 10. Below the first 10 story, basically the engagement goes rapidly into zero. So basically people just, browse like several times, like, they use their thumb several times, and that's it. They are not going even to see these 200 stories. When they come several times during the day, Facebook will turn off some stories you have seen, so there is a possibility you will see around 100. But obviously, you are not going to see anything else. That's why it is very important what these algorithms decide. This is very important. What do they put as the first story, as the second, as the third? It's much more important than what they decide about the story number 57 or a story number 157. And when we think about the phenomenon of United States presidential elections and the rise of fake news and the situation where fake news basically were more engaging on Facebook than so-called mainstream news, we need to take into account that this was not only because people believed fake news. This was not only because people are interested in fake news because they are more interesting. This was also because algorithms were choosing this fake news to be at the start of people's news feeds. And this is the design of Facebook engineers. I'm not saying that they had an idea, oh, we need to promote fake news all over the world. I'm just saying that they made some other decisions that led to this kind of a result. And when you think about the most popular fake news, yeah, maybe that was not the most popular. This was a Georgian fake, but it was not the most popular. So basically, this is the most popular story on Facebook during the last 4 weeks before the election. It is a story by the Washington Post, written by Anne Applebaum, a very respected columnist. This was the most engaging story on Facebook. But it was not the most engaging overall, because the most engaging story overall was this one. This was a story published by the publication called The Daily Presser. Don't worry, you don't know it, I don't know it either. And it was written by somebody calling himself or herself the American Patriot. And that was the most popular story. And I claim Facebook is responsible for making this story the most popular. The question is, how did it happen that Facebook became so important and so powerful? And I would like to tell you a story about probably one of the biggest business model innovations in the past 30 years that came to our industry just recently. So how is it possible? Basically, that was my question when I went to Harvard. That was my first question. How is it even possible that the biggest newspaper in the world doesn't need to have a newsroom? And obviously, when I started to study together with my colleagues, what we found is that there was plenty of businesses that work somewhat differently than these businesses in the past. So how is it possible that the biggest taxi company is basically the company that doesn't own any taxis? How is it? It's called Uber. How is it possible that the biggest hotel company, Airbnb, doesn't really own any hotel properties? How is it possible that the biggest telecom operator, we can claim whether it's Skype or WhatsApp, basically don't have any telecom infrastructure? How is it possible? So these businesses, we call them platforms, and at the moment there are like 200 platforms worth more than $1 billion. Most of them are located in China and in the United States. And this is a new phenomenon. They are extremely powerful and they are growing in all kinds of industries, not only media. And when we look at the most valuable brands in the world, among them, 30 are basically companies that use the platform business model for their main business or for some of their businesses. So how do they work? What's the difference? So traditionally, the businesses worked like this. So you had a business and you were delivering value to different users. That was how it worked. Basically, the value that this user got wasn't different than the value from the other users. When you were getting a newspaper, for example, from a publisher, you didn't care whether your neighbor was reading the same newspaper. It didn't help you to have a better newspaper. The platforms work in a different way because basically everybody can be both a user and a producer of a service or of a value. And the platform works as a sort of a facilitator for exchanges, and everybody can exchange with everybody. So the platform in itself is much more engaging for the users and producers than a traditional business. So if you would like to look for a metaphor, it's like a difference between a Harrods in London and a vernissage in Yerevan. Yeah? In Harrods, you go to a proper department store. There are very nice products. There is somebody selling you the product. Everybody knows who is the seller, who is the user. When you go to the vernissage, basically everybody can sell stuff and buy stuff. It works in a very different way. So what do they do? So first thing, they facilitate these transactions. These transactions can be about information. You can exchange goods. You can exchange currencies. The whole idea is to make these transactions as frictionless as possible, as fast and as cheap as possible. So how do they do it? First, they attract the sites. So Facebook is attracting publishers to come and publish content on Facebook, or game developers to publish their games on Facebook, and users who will be accessing this content. Then they basically filter the offers. So they personalize the best content for the right person. Yeah? The Uber will be basically trying to find the driver that is the closest to the place you are, or the Airbnb will be looking for the apartment that is most suitable for your needs. Yeah? Then they, of course, they match, they make the transaction, they collect the data, how it went, whether all the sites were happy, whether the result was what they wanted to achieve, like having a ride with good, from one place to another, paid and good reviews, and then they can basically make the process work better another time. So they learn all the time and make it better and better and better. This is what the platforms do. They don't want to own any property, they don't want to own any process, they don't want to produce any goods. Facebook doesn't want to produce content. They want to just focus on this facilitation. And there is something that helps them grow much faster than traditional businesses. We call it the network effects. How it works? So basically, when there is a lot of the more there is passengers on Uber, the more drivers are attracted because they know there is a market. We can sell our services. The more drivers are there, basically passengers can find drivers all over the city. So basically, you can get the machine, you can get the car much faster. So this is what makes it basically like a how to say it, like a process that helps the whole system to grow much faster. Because basically, the more drivers there will be more passengers. The more passengers there will be more drivers. This is what leads these platforms to become monopolists on the market. And this is the same how Facebook works. The more users there are, the more advertisers are coming to the site, and the more publishers. The more publishers are there, they all publish content. Even advertising on Facebook is content. So basically, there is more content, more engaging content. People get more engaged with that content, so it attracts more users, and so on, and so on, and so on. This is why it can grow so fast. And by the way, they don't have any assets, so obviously, they are not slowed down by having to hire journalists and work with them and supervise their work and so on and so on. By the way, we know this business model. We had it in the past. If you think about a traditional newspaper business model with classified advertising, this is exactly how it worked. So the more readers there was in the newspapers, the more people wanted to put their classified ads in the paper so they could sell stuff. So basically, because there was a lot of ads, more people were buying the newspaper, and because there was more people buying the newspaper, all the people that wanted to sell something, they wanted to advertise. And that's why, in many markets, newspapers that became like leaders in classified advertising were basically monopolists. So we know how it works. We know it from our history. What's the difference is that traditionally, people needed to browse all these ads. In today's world, you have these algorithms that basically would filter the offers and show you just the best offer. So it will be more frictionless, quicker, and cheaper. So the question is how these algorithms work. So the thing is that nobody knows. We call it the black box. Why is that? First, we know what basically goes into the algorithm, what kind of data is put to the algorithm, and then, of course, we know the result. But what exactly is happening here, we are no longer sure, and even Facebook doesn't know. Facebook hires a department of 30 data scientists that are just trying to understand what their algorithm is doing. Why is that? Let me tell you a story about history of development of algorithms. So traditionally, algorithms were like cooking recipes. So this is me. I love to cook, but I can't. I basically don't know how to do it. So I go to a BBC website, I download the recipe, and I basically follow it, just step by step, very closely. And there is a hope that if I do it exactly like they write, I will have something that is eatable. And my wife will want it. Yeah? And maybe even my kids, and this is really, rarely happens. Yeah? So this is how it was in the past. But today's algorithms are different. They are not like cooking recipes. They are like cooking lessons. So this is my son learning how to make bread. He knows that he needs to use some flour, but he doesn't know which flour. So he will try to make several breads with different kinds of flour. He knows that he needs to add some fluids, but he doesn't know what kind of fluids. So he thinks, maybe I should make a bread with Coke, or maybe I should make a bread with orange juice, or maybe with petrol. Why not? It's also a fluid. Maybe I should add something more. Maybe I should add salt, or maybe I should add nails, or maybe I should add stones. He doesn't know, so he will basically make many versions of bread, and he will try to give it to Daddy to try. And if Daddy dies, it means, no, it didn't work. This combination doesn't work. If Daddy survives, then it means, okay, so I found the way to make it work. And this is basically how modern algorithms work. We call it machine learning. Because they learn, they try many options and they learn all the time. And when they have a lot of data, they are learning what they can do, they can start to predict the result. And when they do these predictions, we start to call these algorithms artificial intelligence, basically. So I found a way to study somewhat how they design these algorithms for Facebook. And basically, I started to look for their patent applications. It wasn't that easy because many of these applications are not filed as Facebook. Basically, individual engineers are filing them personally. So I needed to recreate the phone book of engineers working on a Facebook newsfeed algorithm and then try to look for the patent applications of these people. And I found hundreds of them. What these patents describe is how Facebook wanted the algorithms to work, but over time, of course, the algorithms learned something else. So we don't know whether it is still the case. But we know what the designers wanted. So what I learned first, there is no such a thing as a universal rating of stories. So you cannot really say that this story is going to be successful on Facebook, because Facebook doesn't really calculate it. Facebook doesn't decide it. Facebook doesn't take a story of Anne Applebaum and a story from Daily Patriot and doesn't make any judgment whether this story is better than this one. What they do, they will make individual decision for every user separately whether this story should be shown or not. And they will make this decision upon basically three different major factors. One factor is who is the person that is reading it. So Facebook collects a lot of data about you. Of course, when you register to Facebook, you tell Facebook what's your age, maybe. You tell Facebook maybe about your interests. But even if you don't tell it, Facebook knows it. Because Facebook there is a lot of algorithms that will try to guess or predict information about you. So just by looking what you do, who are your friends, where do you log in to Facebook with your mobile phone, Facebook can infer with a huge accuracy, more than 90%, your age, your sex, your employment status, your schools that you finished, your political views, your sexual preferences. They all know it, and you can check it. You can go to Facebook advertising product, and you can look how you can basically target the ads. This is how you learn what Facebook knows about people, because they infer this information, tracking their behavior. And they will try to compare the profile of the reader with the profile of the content piece itself, and the producer of content. That might be a person or a brand page, like a page of a publisher. The second thing is they look at the story itself, but of course they don't really analyze it very much inside. What they do, they try to determine whether it's a private story. So there are algorithms that will look whether it might be about a wedding or about a newborn child. They will be looking at pictures, they will be looking at keywords, and the goal is basically to show these private stories first, because they know that people most like stories about their friends and family, getting married and having kids, and so on and so on. Then they will also try to determine the topic of the story. They will look at the performance of the story. So what are the people that have seen this story were doing? Were they reacting to the story? Were they liking the story? Were they sharing, commenting, and so on and so on and so on? And they will optimize upon it. So basically, it's like in Sparta. If the kid is strong, Facebook will help it to grow. If the kid is weak, it will be thrown out from the edge of the abyss. Yeah, that's the idea, how they treat the stories. And then, of course, there is important connection between the producer of content and the reader, and the idea is to find out how strong is the connection. So how often do you interact with each other on Messenger? How often are you together on one picture? How often are you liking each other's stories? And so on and so on. The stronger the connection, the higher possibility that you will see the story. The whole thing is that basically it is optimized for a predicted reaction. And the predicted reaction that is most valued is basically to keep you on Facebook site. That is the goal of the whole thing. And why is it a goal? Because basically Facebook makes money with ads. So they need to keep people on Facebook to show them the ads. So the whole thing is about, you could call it, it's like a attention machine. Attention grabbing machine. The whole goal is to keep people. So that's why you could claim that, of course, from the civic point of view, many employees of Facebook, I'm sure they are against fake news, but from the engagement point of view, it doesn't really matter for the business model. There is no incentive, like a business incentive to kill it. How this design of platforms impacts the news consumption, and these are like big questions. So first, if the algorithm is optimized for reactions of people, and one of the reactions is sharing content, it is important to understand why do people share content in general, and also on Facebook. One of the studies from the Professor Berger from Wharton School says people share content because basically it makes them look somewhat. They want to create their image. So I'm sharing this piece from the science section of the New York Times because I want to look smart. Yeah? I'm sharing this funny story from BuzzFeed because I want to look funny to my colleagues. This is why I'm sharing. It's not about the content. It's about my image that I want to create. People share stories, for example, because they want to express their emotions. I'm very angry about this Donald Trump, and how can I express my anger? You know, I have this story, you know, this bloody story, what he did, and I can just share it to my friends. This is how it helps me to basically express myself. Or I have a certain narrative in my head. So, for example, I believe that Armenia is a corrupted country. So whenever I find a story that confirms my views about Armenia, I will publish it on my newsfeed. What is important about it that it doesn't really the reasons why people share don't really. It's not that important what is really content about. It's more important what the people want to say about themselves. Then, we know from studies, for example, in the United States, most of people don't really know that there is such a thing as an algorithm. They think that they see all the news they get from their friends. So there was a study where people were shown the algorithm, the newsfeed from Facebook, and all the news from their friends from Facebook. And they were really surprised. Oh, I thought this person no longer likes me, and that's why I'm not seeing any stories. People are not really aware of algorithms. And people are also not aware who is the source of information. It's a result from the Reuters Institute at Oxford University study. Basically, half of users don't really recognize, don't remember the brand. They think they learned it on Facebook. They don't remember it was on Washington Post or something else. And why is that? You know, one of the reasons might be that basically you cannot really, see the difference. This is a story from Washington Post. This is the fake news story. They look exactly the same. Facebook doesn't help people to recognize what is coming from a respected news source what is coming from a fake news source. And there is such a psychological phenomenon that we call the filter bubble. Of course, it existed long before Facebook. Many newspapers or media outlets, you could say, created filter bubbles for their users. If you were just getting information from this one place, probably all your friends, because you belong to the same social class, also were getting news from the one place. So basically, you were thinking alike. On Facebook, it is, I would say, amplified by these algorithms because they are focused on optimization of reactions of your friends. So basically, they strengthen this effect. And there are studies that confirm it. There are studies from Facebook that basically show that this is not a strong effect. And there are independent studies that claim it's extremely strong effect, and you can choose yourself which one would you believe. Then, there are some information that you can manipulate with the newsfeed to achieve different results. And there was a big scandal when Facebook decided to make an experiment with reducing and increasing negativity and positivity in posts on people's news feeds. And they found out that they could manipulate people's emotions. So they could basically make a small change in the selection of stories for the newsfeed to make people feel more angry or more sad. Yeah? So it's extremely important, the transparency of the process of creating this algorithm, because these manipulations are possible. And Facebook made an experiment, and then they wrote about it in a science journal. And after that, they realized what they have done. Today, they say they have a very strict process of accepting these kind of experiments, but obviously it means it is possible. And then there is a trend of many companies that, for example, organize these psychological tests on Facebook. And they prove to be pretty successful in collecting psychographical information about people. So, for example, just by looking at structure of your friends, you can know whether a person is introvertic or extrovertic. So just by analyzing how you interact with your friends and what is the structure of your friends. Or just by doing a psychotest when there's plenty on Facebook, these funny tests like, are you as such, or are you like a king, or are you whatever? And basically they are designed to collect information about people so they can be used for political and advertising campaigns. So whenever you do these tests, basically you help somebody target you for the ads. And these ads are used, for example, by Donald Trump. So we know that in the last elections, they spent $100 million on creating basically a very huge database of users of social media in United States with very detailed characteristics, more than 4,000 data points. And they use it for political campaigning. And what is interesting is that basically this campaigning was not focused on convincing people to vote for Trump. The most of money was spent on making some people basically staying at home during the election day. So they were, for example, they were targeting black people to believe that Mrs. Clinton is not really truthful, so it's better not to vote for her. And because they knew that they didn't want to vote for Trump, they would stay at home. And that was the goal of the campaign, not really to convince somebody to vote for Trump. It was about to convince them to stay at home so the whites can choose the Trump as a president. So this is how you can basically use it for commercial reasons or for political reasons. And of course, when you know all that, you start to wonder, how does it work in places where maybe the government is more authoritarian than in the United States and has a much stricter control over the social networks? How does it really work? What can you do with all the data that you collect about your people and all the influence that you gain about people's emotions and about people's decisions? And I think it's pretty scary. Thank you very much.